So people are asking me, what are my biggest takeaways from the iPhone 16 launch or the Apple event? I would say there are four big takeaways for me. One is a hardware feature, and people don't really expect to see new hardware features in smartphones anymore. But Apple has launched something called camera control. Now it's almost like a very run-of-the-mill shutter button, the kind we have seen in smartphones for well over a decade. But Apple has really thought through this. It's not just a shutter button. It's a mechanical button. You click it, you sort of give a double press, soft double press, and what it does is that it opens up the camera app. It lets you click a photo, of course, but it also lets you almost shuffle through all the settings. So you can go to zoom, you slide your finger on the button and you zoom in, zoom out. You can then maybe double tap and go to the aperture. You adjust the aperture, or you adjust the exposure. It's really super because you don't have to touch the screen anymore to take a shot or to change the settings. It's almost like using a DSLR, because if you remember the dial on top of the DSLR, so it's like you are looking through the viewfinder and you are moving your fingers around to get to the perfect setting. This, I think, is almost a master stroke, and I wouldn't be surprised because if soon a lot of the other smartphone companies are going to copy the same. Now, let's come to the second point. What I thought the next most interesting thing, and it's a very Apple thing. Nobody else does things like this, right? Nobody else bothers about what is the so-called minority, because a smartphone is supposed to be for the masses, especially a flagship, even the other devices that you do. But Apple sort of packs in a lot of these accessibility features into its smartphones and devices that it has, let's say, a huge share of that minority market. Nobody else caters to them, and Apple does really well at that. So what Apple has done this time is not with the smartphone, it's actually with the AirPods Pro. A new update in the AirPods Pro. It does a lot of things, but what it does most interestingly, it lets you run a hearing test using the AirPods. And if you know, in the US and in Europe, these tests are so expensive. Once you do the hearing test, it can actually start working like a hearing aid based on the kind of deficiency you have in your hearing. It will adjust itself and it starts wearing like a hearing aid. I think it's again a very interesting way to think of a product. And also think about it. A lot of people don't want to be seen wearing a hearing aid. They would be fine using an Apple AirPod Pro in their ears, and they are actually using it as a hearing aid. People would not realize. People would think, okay, they are always on calls or listening to music. I think this again is something very, very interesting, but I don't think others are going to replicate this thing. The third point for me, again, is how Apple's is how ha- the third point for me again is how Apple is rolling out artificial intelligence, or what it calls Apple Intelligence, into its devices. This is maybe the only silicon to screen kind of integration. So in the iPhone 16, the A18 Bionic processor is sort of built to run these large language models on device when needed. On the iPhone 16 Pro Max, you have the A18 Pro, which is a better, more powerful processor, which can do a lot more, because on the Pro, you are catering to professional use cases, especially with the camera, with the video recording. So you have a lot of other stuff happening. And nobody else is thinking of adding stuff on the hardware. But even this camera control button that we spoke about opens up a window for the AI to see using the camera and give you suggestions, or identify things for you. It can even run a search on what it is running, seeing on the camera. And across the board, Siri is suddenly intelligent. Siri has been there for well over a decade. It's suddenly intelligent. It can answer your queries with context, depending on the screen you are in, the location the phone is being used in. It even knows your family. You don't have to say, hey, you don't have to give a specific name or tag a person. It knows who your son or daughter is, and it gives you that kind of a context. Again, a very different take from what other smartphone companies have done. And the last point is how Apple is now looking at the professional space. Here is a smartphone company which thinks it has a huge opportunity in tapping the professional space. It's almost like how the iMac or the MacBook captured the entire creative industry over the years. The iPhone Pro, or the iPhone 16 Pro Max in this case, or the Pro, has this opportunity to start tapping this entire creative space. And we are talking about high-end creativity, because the phone now gives you 4K in 120 frames per second. It even lets you record to an external device if you are into those kind of work streams, and it gives you cinematic slow motion. On top of all this is the ability to do an audio mixing of the kind you would do post process in a studio, even to change the LUTs on the video even before you're shooting or after you've done. These are all high resource taking kind of workflows for a videographer. These things are all coming into the iPhone 16 Pro and the Pro Max this time. And again, it's catering to this professional space the way no other smartphone is, can, or maybe will.